very nice having a bit of sunlight outside, but it's playing havoc with my the lighting on this video. Right, so next process, I'm going to move on to the weathering the platforms themselves, and for that I'm going to use Tamiya Paints. I've got a couple that I'm probably going to work with. XF90, which is red brown 2, and hull red, which is XF9. And I'll start by putting the XF90 on, and then we'll go over the top with the XF9, the hull red, over the top of that, and then the final step will be to darken it down afterwards. So also I've got a little pot of water with a slight mix of washing up liquid in it for the wet, so I'll put that on and we'll make sure it runs over the edge, because quite happy for this to roll over the edges. I'm just going to do maybe half of these initially. Might have to put a bit more water on there as if it dries out. We'll put plenty on. Oops. Okay, we'll start with the XF90. Give it a quick stir. This should just spread out. I'll go with the water with the washing up liquid in it to break the surface tension. And we can just fill it around where we want it to go. I might have overdone that first one a bit. Just fills. But there's gaps, and I think we can probably run a bit off the front there as well to go to the sole bars, but we'll deal with those in a minute. So yeah, we'll do have to say these Tamiya paints do seem to flow and work a bit better than the unsurprisingly the cheapos that I was using for the uprights in the centre there. They look nicely mixed. Oops, again, got a bit much there, but we can sort that out with a bit more water. And you can actually manipulate it quite nicely by moving it around, seeing where it flows. think I've overdone that one again now, but more water in, we can run that off the edge, I think. Run a bit along, and the sole bar is very much grime anyway, and once I put the I'll use the cheapo black around each of these reels. We'll need weathering in, that'll be covered in oil and grime anyway. And to do the ends, there's enough on the brush that it's almost dry brushing with water and the little bit of paint that's on there. That's good. Right, I'll leave that to dry out and then come back and add the dark around the backs and the edges. I want to catch that just before it's dried so it kind of stays where I want it. The water with the washing up, obviously that just breaks the surface tension. This flows quite nicely. I don't want it to flow quite as much when I'm doing those at the back, but I do want it to kind of mix in with it a bit. Again, just soften the edges. So yeah, we'll do that with once it's dried off a bit. If I give that half an hour or so, then that should be alright. The other thing that I haven't done yet that I said I was going to do is the rust marks at the top. I think I'll do them with this whole red, which is pretty good. No, I won't. I need to use the same technique because they are not rust, they are wear marks. So we'll do them with the move the Tamiya. And the more I move this around the better, because this has still got a bit of flow on it, so every time I'm tipping it and moving it, the paint's moving around, just settles in nicely. We'll just use this black, brown and sort of red mix to touch in these top corners. This is where it'll where the cables will cut over the top, wear the paint off, but also kind of polish it in as well, so we'll get that polishing in effect in a bit. I'll there we have daubed in each of those. We need to do the little fixings at the top here as well. They're almost dry brushing in. I'm going to just put a little brown wash over this as well, just to soften the edges a bit, because I've gone a bit harsh with this, I think. Get a bit of IPA on there with a bit of brown. Starting to dry out down the bottom there now. Think about adding a bit of darker in. Need to just run over again. A bit of brown and IPA is not a lot to do on these stanchions. Just take the edge off the original colour. Takes the edge off the yellow. Good thing I find with these cheap paints for this job, and I did a Amtrak baggage car, which is heavily weathered, for the ones that the Morristown Leary have on site. this cheap paint is quite grainy when it dries, particularly when it's mixed with IPA or with the water. When it dries out, the Tamiya leaves quite a smooth finish, but this has the cheap stuff. Has quite a well, I can't even describe how it is, but it's quite sandy almost, but very fine, and for rust it just produces absolutely superb texture, which is why, I mean, I'd say I'm sure the IPA, the Tamiya paints have better longevity, but this really does produce quite a nice textured finish when they're all mixed up, so which is why I do quite like using them for this. That's drying out quite quickly on the bottom here, so I'll give it another minute or two and then I'll get some of the dark on. The other nice thing is with using these techniques, like, I don't think I'll bother putting a wash over it because this kind of creates its own wash anyway, and it does tend to fill up the fill the cracks and the joints and the low spots and all the places where you'd kind of expect it to go, in all honesty. So yeah, I'm just going to, these dark bits, I'm just using, again, this is the cheap paint, and a bit of on the palette I've got, excuse the mess, but I've got a bit of the black and the brown, and I'm mixing the two together, mostly black but it's got a bit of brown in it, dab of IPA as well if needs be, and then just running it down the edges where on the prototype photos you can see it gets really dark in at the backs. Oh. Went and made myself a cup of coffee whilst I let this dry, and I'm hoping I haven't left it too long because I really want to get this dark blended in, and if it's too dry it's not going to flow and mix with the Tamiyas. Important thing I think with this is to know when to stop. Definitely need a bit more in that end, I think. Mind you, again, the effect's going to be varied across the width, so I don't want to have them all the same, so we might I might just call that. Let's see how that looks when it's dry. I think just want to, again, where I've put the wash across, I think I've taken off some of the darker patches on the bolsters at the bottom there, so I'll just pop a little bit more of the brown and black mix on there. Okay, there we go. I'm going to call that for now. I'll leave that to dry, and then touching some more bits once it's dried up. Okay, so that's the decks finished. pleased with how they've turned out. I think the effect's pretty good, consistent across both sides of the model, but different enough that it's given a quite a nice natural effect to the wear and the weather on the decks. Move on to the ends next, but there's one crucial piece of learning that I've had from this, having done the wet on the decks, and that is that the way these cars are put together, they are a die cast. The decks, the sole bars and the bracing are die cast with the plastic ends and the Centerbeam fitted on, clipped onto them in effect, which means that the paint has, and I didn't spot this until I'd let the decks dry, but the paint is, if you can see that there, has, if it can focus, the auto focus a little bit slow on this camera, the paint's leaked through basically the fitting points. So and that has come out into the bottom of the car. Not the end of the world in itself, because obviously the bottom is going to be painted and weathered anyway, or was going to. The issue being, of course, that it's going to work both ways. My plan was to airbrush the sole bars and the chassis, but if the paint's going to leak through top to bottom, it's going to go the other way, and I don't really want to get any more paint. I'm happy with how this looks. I don't want anything leaking through, so I'll have a little think about that, and I might have to come up with a different solution. I mean, it's not the end of the world if I don't paint it. They're not when it's on the track, unless you, well, it's not visible. But I was hoping to just put something on just to give it a bit of an effect. I might end up just being a little bit more careful than I might be, hand painting the bottom of the sole bars and maybe putting some hand paint on the chassis a little bit thicker than I would if I was airbrushing it. But yeah, I'll have to have a think about that. I mean, there's not a lot of detail on the bottom, you're not going to look at it. I don't plan on modelling a train wreck, so that should be alright. The second Centerbeam arrived in the week as well, or between videos, which is this one in Union Pacific livery in the brown, which is going to be in itself an interesting challenge to weather because obviously of its colour. But again, I've been looking at a few pictures. They weathered in exactly the same way as the other ones, so sorry. So I'll use the same techniques, but what I am going to do is start, before I do anything else, I'll spray and weather down the underside. It won't matter if anything comes through because I can weather that out, take it out with IPA and whatever when I do the top. And obviously that also won't matter because if there is any movement of paint or IPA or whatever from the top to the bottom on this, it doesn't matter if it affects it underneath, it's not going to be visible, so it really won't hurt. So yeah, my important learning point from this has been paint the underside first. This came, again, it's another eBay purchase from a chap that I've bought a few bits from. This is the first item I've bought from him. The wheels have been painted very, very badly. This is the first item I've had from him that's actually had that on it, so I'm not sure that it was him that did that. But yeah, they are, sorry, I'm just getting used to my camera angles. They are a little bit of a mess. So they'll either drop in a bit of IPA and get stripped, or I've got a couple of bags of wheels, so I might just pop them off and replace them and then paint them when I get to that point. So yeah, that's the Union Pacific one. We'll crack on with that once I finish this one. I'm not gonna film all that process as well. I'll just do it, and I'll probably show that as an extra thing at the end once I'm done. And this is obviously the one we're working on at the moment. So there we are, on to the ends. I said on the introduction that I was going to probably airbrush the ends. I'm probably not going to airbrush the ends. I'm going to use the same wet on wet. That's worked really well on the the platforms, so on the decks. So I will use the same technique on the ends. I think, well, I might mix the two. I think a lot of the rust and the wear around the base and the sides will look nice on the wet and wet. But then there's also general road grime, which I'll pop over at the end, and I'll probably try and do that with the airbrush and just to put everything together. And then once the ends are done, I've just got to finish the wear on the centre beam and on the bolsters on the deck. So that's where we're at. Let's go on with the ends. You'll have to excuse me if some of the camera angles have changed in this video, and also if I lose a bit on the where the images are. I've just received some new mounts for my tripod, and I'm still getting used to how it's set up. So yeah, I've just changed things around a bit. Hopefully in the long term work a bit better, but for the minute, yeah, I'm still getting used to how the camera's set up. So moving on to the ends. I was going to wet, I think I said I was going to wet them, but I've had a little bit of a change of plan, because looking again at how they're put together, the centre beam section itself slots into the end, and down the centre here, probably can't see, not there's a lot to see, down the centre there is the clips and the slight gap where the end and the centre go together. Now obviously I'm a little bit concerned. One of my favourite aspects of this is how the bulkhead has turned out in terms of the rusting effect it's got on it, and I don't want to spoil that by allowing paint to seep through here if I'm wet on wet in the end. So flip side of that also being that, having looked at the photo, I don't know how visible this is on here, but a lot of this rusting and marking here, not rusting so much as just dirt, it's very similar to what's on the inside here. So I think I'll do the same. I'll use the cheap craft DecoArt acrylics on the end here with a bit of IPA to get a bit of downflow, and again the weathering graduates, not as bad at the top and a lot more intense at the bottom, from obviously I presume from road dirt and kick up from the track as it's travelling. So I would like to, I think I'll get this basic effect on the same as I did on the sides, but then to just change it up a bit and to emphasise that difference that this is road dirt rather than just general dirt, I will probably hopefully be able to run over this with the airbrush at the end and just get that different effect at the bottom. So that's what I'm going to do there, and hopefully without that cutting through onto the inside. So yeah, we'll get some of these cheaper paints on the end here. Committed the heinous offence the other day of not washing my palette, I realised after I'd finished. So it's still got a lot of the old paint in it, and I've only got the one at the moment, so I need to get some more of those cheap plastic palettes. So we'll get a bit of paint and a little rub of IPA over the end there and see how this goes. I'll use the same, obviously because I want it to turn out the same, I'll use the same 3 colours that we were using on the that I was using on the deck. Sorry, not on the deck, on the centre beam itself. Okay, so let's see where we're going with this. Still want to use it reasonably thin. I'm going to try and keep the car as upright as I can, because I don't want it running down and going between the seeping through the joint lines. It's going to be quite hard getting in behind these ladders, which are not a separate part. So I've quick look inside and make sure there's nothing coming through. No, I think we're right at the moment. So this is just the, I'm not even going to mix this up, this is just the burnt umber with IPA. I'm just going to pop it on. It's perhaps a little bit thick at the moment in terms of its coverage, 100%, but I'll stick a bit more IPA on and wash some of it off. Touch a bit of IPA in there because I want sort of the middle of the panels to be largely clear of paint, because there's not a huge amount of dirt on them on the prototype photo, but then the edges need to hold a bit more. Well, I think that is already looking pretty good. I'm not going to put too much more on there, because if I'm going to run over with the airbrush as well, that'll fill out all this at the bottom. Yeah, I think that's not looking too bad at the moment. He says, suddenly putting too much on there. Don't panic. I'll get the IPA in there and wash that out. I might come in with a bit of unwashed and just touching those joint lines on the stanchions. Go with a bit of black in there as well, I think. Oh, sorry, I'm right off camera there. I'm struggling with this new setup with my camera. Managed to get a bit on the edge, but I think we can wash that off easy enough with a bit of IPA in a minute. Gone a bit heavy there now, but I can soon get that off. Blob off the side there as well. There we go. Quick check inside. Yeah, there's nothing leaking through, so that's good. Just want to darken down the bottom edge there. Right, I think I said last time, the secret of this is know when to stop. It's probably a good idea to take my own advice on that at the moment and stop. I think that's fine. I'll have a look at the other end. I'll try not to keep disappearing off camera on this one if I can help it. Again, I think I'm going to leave that now. We'll have a look and see how it looks once it's done. I might just add a bit of extra scraping down, certainly down this edge, looking at the photo. But I think I'll probably need to let the IPA dry a bit. We might be alright. We'll do it on this end. Same mix I did on the inside, a bit black brown, a bit of this burgundy rose, and then have a look at the photo and get it kind of something like it. a bit on the top of them, I think, just on the edge there. Again, this should look nice once it's dry, with the finishing detail on the top of it. Should look pretty good. I'm gonna just touch the edge of the steps as well, because they will receive a bit of a wear. Won't do them all. And the outside of the brake wheel. Because that, once it's got the full gloss wear marks on it, will hopefully look quite good. Some steps here as well. I'll just do those. Okay, there we go. I'm going to leave that now. We'll call that, I think, done. Okay, so I've let that dry. I think the ends have come out pretty well. I don't think I've gone too over the top with the colour on there. So we've got the brown down all the joints, but and over the surface as well. It's just taken the surface colour off a little bit, and it's I think that's turned out quite well. Not going to do anything more with that for the moment. I need to do the sort of the rust on the the wear marks on the steps is going to be the finishing touch on there, but first I need to run the airbrush over and just put the road dirt on the ends. This appears to now be turning into a 3-part video. This is part 2, has ended up quite long as well, so I shall stop here. Part 3 will be putting some colour on the bottom and on the ends with the airbrush, then getting a little bit of shine on the wear on the centre beam and on the bolsters, and obviously the steps as well. And then finally I've got the easy line, which I'm going to use to create the cables, and that'll be the very last thing I do, and that'll be hopefully at the end of part 3. So there we go. I hope you stuck with me. As I say, appreciate it's getting a bit long as a series, but I'm happy with how it's looking. It's been a bit of experimentation on my part, and hopefully it's been some use to anyone who's planning on doing something very similar. So yeah, there we are with that. And oh yes, that's the other one. Hopefully at the end of part 3 I may or may not have got the Union Pacific one done as well, but we'll see how that goes on time. Again, thanks very much if you made it this far, and hopefully you'll join me again in part 3 to get this little project finished off.